The screen is black for a moment, then fades in on a woman, Elara, 32, sitting in a simply but artistically decorated apartment. She looks directly at the camera, her expression calm, but with a deep, knowing weight in her eyes. She takes a breath before she speaks. My brother stood on a stage, under a spotlight, in front of a logo I designed, and told a room full of people that he created it all by himself, on a whim, one sleepless night. And as the crowd roared, my parents sitting in the front row clapped the loudest, tears of pride in their eyes. So I stood up, and in front of everyone, I didn't just reclaim my work. I reclaimed my entire life. I hadn't walked into the 10-year anniversary party for Oak Haven Roasters planning to detonate a bomb. Honestly, I came with a peace offering. I came ready to play my part one last time. The supportive sister. The quiet creative force. The family's best-kept secret. The event was held in a renovated industrial warehouse, all exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and the rich, intoxicating scent of roasted coffee beans mingling with expensive perfume. It was the physical embodiment of the brand I had bled for, a perfect blend of rustic authenticity and modern polish, a brand I had built from the ground up. Of course, I arrived on time, which in my family's unspoken rulebook meant I was late. My brother Liam was already in his element. He moved through the crowd with the easy charisma of a politician. His suit was impeccably tailored. His smile so practiced it could probably be trademarked. He was the face, the voice, the name everyone associated with Oak Haven's meteoric rise. He saw me, and his smile didn't falter, but it lost its wattage, dimming slightly as he approached. "Elara, you made it," he said, giving me a one-armed hug that felt more like a pat-down. It was the kind of greeting you give a distant cousin you're obligated to invite to a wedding. I smiled back, a smile I've perfected over the years. It looks genuine, but it feels like stretching a rubber band to its breaking point. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I said, my voice smoother than I felt. My mother glided over, her eyes scanning my dress with the precision of a quality control inspector. "Oh, honey, you look comfortable," she said, which was her code for "you didn't try hard enough." She kissed the air beside my cheek. My father gave me his standard greeting, a firm nod and a brisk, "Good to see you." It was the same acknowledgement he gave the mailman. Naturally, my seat wasn't at the main table with the investors and local dignitaries. I was seated at a table near the back, by the catering entrance, tucked between a sales representative for a dairy supplier and Liam's old college roommate, who'd had a bit too much of the complimentary craft beer and kept calling me Elena. I didn't correct him. I didn't sigh. I didn't make a scene. I just sat there, a ghost at my own feast. I kept my hand on my bag, where a heavy, leather-bound portfolio was tucked away. It wasn't a threat. It was an offering. It contained the original concept sketches, the first logo drafts, the color palette breakdowns, the hand-drawn font I'd created for our packaging, the very soul of the company. My plan was to give it to Liam privately, a symbolic gesture, a way of saying, "I see what you've built, and I'm proud. Here are the roots. Let's finally acknowledge them. Together." It was my last-ditch effort to build a bridge over the canyon of their silence. I still had that tiny, stupid sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That tonight, on the 10th anniversary of our shared dream, they might finally see me. The evening droned on. The air was thick with chatter, the clinking of glasses, and a curated playlist of indie folk music. Speaker after speaker took the stage to praise Liam's genius, his vision, his relentless drive. They talked about him like he was Steve Jobs, but with better coffee. My parents would catch my eye from the front table and offer a tight, distant smile, as if to say, "Isn't our son amazing?" They were so blinded by the spotlight shining on him that they didn't seem to notice I was sitting in the dock. A local journalist came over to our table, her eyes scanning for a quote. Liam's roommate pointed at me. "You should talk to her. She's his sister." The journalist's eyes lit up for a second. "Oh, wonderful. What's it like being the sister of a visionary like Liam?" I opened my mouth to say something real, something about the late nights and the initial struggle, but my mother materialized at my elbow, her hand on my arm, a gentle but firm warning. "She's just so proud of him," my mother chirped for me. "We all are. He's always been the one with the big ideas." The journalist nodded, scribbled it down, and moved on. My mother gave my arm a final squeeze, a silent, good girl, and returned to her seat. I felt myself shrink a little more in my chair. Then came the main event. Liam strode onto the stage to a thunderous applause. The massive Oakhaven logo. My logo. The one I'd spent 6 months perfecting, with the interlocking oak leaf and coffee bean, was projected behind him. He looked like a king addressing his court. "Thank you. Thank you all for being here," he started, his voice resonating with practiced humility. 10 years ago, Oakhaven Roasters was just a dream. People thought we were crazy. They said the market was too saturated, that a small family-run business couldn't compete. He paused for dramatic effect. But my parents, they believed in me. He nodded towards them, and my mother dabbed a tear from her eye. I clapped along with everyone else, my hands feeling disconnected from my body. He went on, telling the story of the brand. And that's when it happened. "I'll never forget the night the idea truly crystallized," he said, his voice dropping to a confidential, almost sacred tone. "I was in our old garage, couldn't sleep, surrounded by dusty tools and the smell of sawdust. I had this old crumpled napkin, and I just started sketching." He looked out at the audience, a wistful smile on his face. "I drew this little leaf, and then a coffee bean, and I realized they fit together, like destiny. That became our logo, that single simple idea, born in the middle of the night. That was the spark, the soul of everything we've become." The room was silent, captivated by his mythology. My mythology. I felt the air leave my lungs. The napkin story. It was a complete fabrication. He wasn't even there. I was the one who came up with the logo at my own drafting table after weeks of painstaking research into botanical illustrations and vintage typography. I presented it to him and my father in a formal pitch, like a real designer, and now he was claiming it as his own spontaneous, folksy stroke of genius. I waited. I prayed that he would add, "Of course, I couldn't have done it without my sister Elara, the true design talent behind it all." I looked at my parents, hoping to see a flicker of correction, a slight shake of the head, anything. Instead, my father beamed, his face glowing with vicarious pride. My mother was openly weeping now, her hands clasped to her chest. They weren't just letting him tell the lie. They were endorsing it. They were a part of it. In that moment, the low buzz of the room faded into a dull, flat silence in my ears. It wasn't anger that washed over me. It was a profound, chilling clarity. It was the feeling of a key finally turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had deliberately, publicly, and lovingly erased me. Before I fully registered what I was doing, I was on my feet. My chair scraped against the concrete floor, a harsh sound in the stunned silence that followed Liam's applause line. I didn't stumble. I didn't rush. I walked towards the stage with a strange, unnerving calm. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Liam's triumphant smile froze, melting into confusion. My mother's face went slack, her mouth a small, perfect O of disbelief. I didn't ask for the microphone. I just took it from the stand beside him. My hand wasn't even shaking. I turned to face the crowd, my brother a statue of bewilderment next to me. "My brother is a brilliant storyteller," I began, my voice even and clear, amplified throughout the silent warehouse. It's one of his greatest gifts, and that story was his masterpiece. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience. They thought this was part of the show. "He's right that the soul of a brand is everything," I continued, my eyes scanning the room until they landed on a man in the third row. He was older, with kind eyes and a tweed jacket. Professor Alistair Finch, my mentor from college, the one who told me I had a gift, the one I had called to invite personally tonight. But a soul isn't born on a napkin. It's built. It's drafted and revised and agonized over. It's poured onto paper, not as a whim, but with intention. I reached into my bag and pulled out the heavy, leather-bound portfolio. I held it up. "This is the soul of Oak Haven Roasters," I said. "The original sketches, the typography studies, the brand Bible, the work that was done before a single bean was ever roasted." I walked to the edge of the stage and down the small set of stairs, directly towards Professor Finch. He was looking at me, his expression a mixture of shock and a deep, dawning understanding. I didn't say another word to the crowd. I just walked right up to him and placed the portfolio in his hands. "Professor," I said, my voice now quiet, just for him. "You once offered me a position at the university. You told me that if I ever wanted to teach, to share what I know about design, the door would always be open." He nodded slowly, his hands clutching the portfolio like a sacred text. "It is, Elara. It always has been." I looked at him, and for the first time all night, my smile was real. It felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. I turned my head just enough to make sure my voice would carry back to the stage. "Well," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I accept." Then I turned, walked straight past my family's table without a glance, and out the main entrance into the cool night air. The bomb had gone off, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt completely and utterly free. I didn't just quit a company. I quit the role they had written for me. They say that when you're boiling a frog, it doesn't notice the water getting hotter until it's too late. My life was that pot of water. The temperature had been rising for a decade, so gradually I'd convinced myself the simmering discomfort was normal, that it was just the price of family, the cost of loyalty. The erasure at the anniversary party wasn't a sudden attack. It was simply the moment the water finally boiled. The signs were always there. written in invisible ink all over my childhood. I was the quiet one, the artistic one. Liam was the loud one, the charming one. Our report cards would come home, my straight A's earning a pleasant, "That's nice, honey," while his B- in gym would be cause for a celebratory pizza night, because he's really trying. My detailed drawings were clutter for the coffee table. His lopsided clay ashtrays were displayed on the mantel like priceless artifacts. The real turning point was when I was 18. I had been accepted into the Rhode Island School of Design. RESD. It wasn't just a school. It was my entire world. The validation of every hour I'd ever spent with a pencil in my hand. The scholarship they offered me was substantial. I remember holding the acceptance letter, the paper feeling sacred. I ran into the living room, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. My dad was at the kitchen table, his head in his hands, surrounded by bills. His small construction business was failing. My mom was sitting opposite him, her face pale with worry. My announcement landed in that room with all the grace of a lead balloon. My dad looked up, his eyes weary. That's great, Elara. But we can't afford the rest of it. Not now. My mom added, her voice brittle. It's a lovely hobby, dear, but it's not a real career. It's not practical. A week later, they called what they termed a family summit. It was just the four of us in the living room. Liam, ever the opportunist, had an idea. He'd been talking about getting into the artisanal coffee scene. He had the salesmanship, the charisma, but he had no concept, no brand, no aesthetic. "Elara," my father said, his voice taking on the tone of a weary general negotiating a truce. "Your brother has a real plan, a business, something that could save this family. Your art, your design skills, that's not just a hobby. It could be the engine for this. You could design everything. The logo, the shops, the whole feel of it." Liam leaned forward, his eyes shining with ambition. "We'll be partners, Elara. 50-50. You're the heart. I'm the mouth. Together, we'll be unstoppable." I was 18. I was scared. I loved my parents, and I saw their fear. I saw a way to be the hero, to finally do something they would see as valuable, as practical. So I did it. I turned down RISD. I wrote them a letter, my hand shaking, deferring my dream for my family's. I poured every ounce of my creativity, every bit of the talent that had gotten me into one of the best art schools in the country, into Oakhaven Roasters. For the first 2 years, it felt like a partnership. We worked out of the garage, me at my drafting table, him on the phone. I designed the packaging that won a local design award. When Liam went to accept it, he thanked the team. He never said my name. When I brought it up later, he said, "It just sounds more professional, you know? Less mom and pop." I designed the layout for our first cafe, a concept so warm and inviting that it was featured in a regional magazine. The article quoted Liam extensively about his vision for a community-centric space. My name was mentioned once, in passing, as his sister, who helps out with the decor. My mother framed the article and hung it in the hallway. The 50-50 partnership dissolved without a single document ever being signed. As the money started coming in, my father, now the company's CFO, explained that it was more tax efficient if Liam was the sole proprietor and I was paid a generous salary as the creative director. It's all staying in the family anyway. What's the difference?" he'd said. I tried to speak up, but my voice was always treated as a minor inconvenience. When I'd present a new marketing concept in a meeting, my father would listen politely, then turn to Liam and say, "Son, what do you think is the best business move here?" My ideas were only good once they came out of my brother's mouth. Professor Finch was the only one who seemed to remember who I was. He'd email me every year or so. "Saw the new Oakhaven packaging. Unmistakably your work. Brilliant as always. That teaching offer still stands, you know. Don't let the world forget you're an artist first." His emails were like little life rafts of sanity in an ocean of gaslighting. So when Liam stood on that stage and told the napkin story, he wasn't just stealing an anecdote. He was stealing my sacrifice. He was taking the dream I had given up and retroactively claiming it as his own. And my parents weren't just clapping for their son. They were clapping for the neat, tidy story that absolved them of their role in my deferred life. They were applauding the lie because it was more comfortable than the truth. The water had finally boiled over, and for the first time, I had the clarity to simply climb out of the pot. The night air was cool and crisp against my flushed cheeks. I didn't have my car keys, my purse, or my phone. I had walked out with nothing but the clothes on my back and a decade of suppressed rage that had finally solidified into purpose. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. The silence was a balm. No music, no chatter. No applause for a lie. I'd made it about 3 blocks when a car pulled up beside me. It was Professor Finch. He rolled down the passenger window, his face etched with concern. "Elara, get in." I didn't argue. I slid into the passenger seat, the smell of old books and pipe tobacco a comforting antidote to the cloying sweetness of the party. He didn't speak for a long moment, just drove. Finally, he said, his voice soft. "Are you all right?" "I think so," I replied, surprised to find that it was true. "I think I'm better than all right." "What you did back there," he started, then shook his head in disbelief. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen." He glanced at the leather portfolio sitting on the back seat. "He really said he drew it on a napkin." I let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a bark. "The soul of the company," I quoted. "The soul of the company is in that portfolio," he said firmly. "And it's yours. It has always been yours." My phone, I realized, was buzzing relentlessly in my abandoned purse back at the warehouse. I could picture it perfectly. My mother calling, then my father, then Liam. Their confusion would be hardening into indignation. The narrative would already be shifting. I wasn't the wronged party. I was the unstable one, the jealous sister who caused a scene. We arrived at my apartment building. Professor Finch put the car in park, but didn't turn off the engine. "About the job, Elara," he said, turning to me. I meant it. It's an adjunct professorship to start, but it's real. The department head is a huge admirer of your work. The real work. I don't even have a resume, I whispered, the reality of my impulsive decision starting to dawn on me. "Your resume is in that portfolio," he said, pointing to the back seat. "It's in every coffee shop, on every bag of beans, on every website banner you ever designed for that company. You have a decade of professional experience, the best kind." He handed me his card. "Call me Monday. We'll sort out the details. Go get some rest. You've earned it." I thanked him, my voice thick with emotion, and got out of the car. As I walked up the path to my door, I saw them. My parents' car was parked hastily by the curb. They were standing on my doorstep, bathed in the yellow glow of the porch light. Liam was with them. The confrontation I had fled had followed me home. I stopped at the edge of the lawn, my keys feeling heavy in my hand. Liam saw me first. He took a step forward, his hands raised in a gesture of placation. "Elara, what the hell was that?" he demanded, his voice a low, furious hiss. "That," I said, walking slowly towards them, "was a resignation. You humiliated us," my mother burst out, her face a mask of fury and hurt. "In front of everyone. Our friends, our investors. What were you thinking?" "Ooh, I was thinking about a girl who turned down a scholarship to RISD to save the family business," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I looked directly at my father. I was thinking about a 50-50 partnership that mysteriously vanished. I was thinking about my name being scrubbed from every success story this company has ever had. My father had the grace to look momentarily ashamed, but he recovered quickly. "This is not the time or the place for this discussion. You made a spectacle of yourself." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You made a spectacle of me. For 10 years. I was your silent, convenient little ghostwriter. The talent you kept in the attic. And tonight, you didn't just ignore me. You stood on a stage and told the world that I don't exist." I looked at Liam, whose face had gone from angry to sullen. "A napkin, Liam? Really? That's the best you could come up with?" He flinched. "It was a story. For the brand. You're being so dramatic. It doesn't matter who came up with the logo." "It matters to me!" The words exploded out of me, louder than I intended. "It matters because it was mine. The shop designs were mine. The brand identity was mine. I gave you my entire future. And you couldn't even give me credit for a drawing." My mother stepped forward, her voice dropping into a tone of wounded manipulation. "We gave you everything. A stable job, a beautiful life. We did this for you, too." That was it. That was the line. "No," I said, the finality of it settling deep in my bones. "You did this for you. You needed a savior, and I was it. And then you needed a charismatic son to put on the posters, and Liam was it. And you needed me to be quiet and grateful. I'm done being quiet. I'm done being grateful for scraps from a table I helped build." I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. I turned back to look at the three of them, a united front of bewildered indignation on my porch. "The company is yours," I said. "The name, the profits, the lie. You can have it. But my talent, my name, and my story, those are mine, and I'm taking them back, starting tonight." I closed the door on their stunned faces, the click of the lock sounding like the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I leaned my back against the door, and for the first time, I didn't feel rage or sadness. I felt the exhilarating, terrifying, and profound emptiness of a blank page. The story of Oakhaven Roasters was over. My story was just beginning. In the days that followed, the fallout was both exactly what I expected and far more insidious. The silence from my family was deafening. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a tactical one. The silence of an army regrouping. I knew they were talking. Just not to me. They were spinning the narrative, shoring up their defenses. My first official act of freedom was calling Professor Finch. His voice was warm and reassuring. He'd already spoken to the university's department head. They wanted to meet with me. He helped me craft a resume that reframed my last 10 years not as an employee of Oakhaven, but as the foundational creative partner. For the first time, I listed my achievements, without apology. Lead designer and brand architect, recipient of the Regional Design Excellence Award, creator of the Oakhaven visual identity, resulting in a 300% growth in brand recognition. Seeing it in black and white was like looking in a mirror after years of seeing only a distorted reflection. The first ripple from the outside world came a week later. A well-known design blogger, someone who had followed Oakhaven's rise, sent me an email. The subject line was simply, "Your story?" Apparently, a few people at the party had been quietly talking. The journalist who my mother had intercepted, a few of the younger staff members, who had always felt my influence in the company's aesthetic. Whispers were starting to form. The official story had a crack in it. I agreed to a phone call with her. I didn't rant or rave. I just told the truth. Calmly and factually. I told her about RISD. I told her about the initial partnership agreement. I told her I had the original design portfolio to prove it. I didn't have to slander them. The facts did the work for me. 2 days later, a short but powerful article appeared on her blog. The silent architect of Oakhaven Roasters steps into the light. It didn't accuse. It simply laid out my story alongside the company's public one and let the reader draw their own conclusions. It was shared dozens, then hundreds of times within the design community. That's when my family's tactical silence broke. My phone lit up with a text from Liam. "You're trying to destroy me. After everything I've done for you." I didn't reply. Then came an email from my father. It was formal and cold, written like a business cease and desist. "Elara, your current actions are potentially damaging to the company you claim to care about. We need to have a formal discussion to resolve this matter before it gets out of hand." He was trying to manage me like a PR crisis. The most painful message came from my mother. It was a long, rambling voicemail, alternating between tears and fury. "How could you do this to your brother? He's the one who had all the stress, who worked day and night to make it a success. You just sat in your office and drew pictures. Family doesn't air its dirty laundry in public. You have broken my heart." She was right about one thing. I had broken her heart. But what she didn't understand was that they had been slowly, methodically breaking mine for a decade. The only difference was, I did it all at once, in the open. The university meeting was a revelation. I sat at a large table with Professor Finch and the department head, a sharp, intelligent woman named Dr. Anya Sharma. I walked them through the portfolio. I didn't just show them the final logo. I showed them the 50 rejected versions. I showed them the mind maps, the texture studies for the coffee bags, the architectural sketches for the cafes. Dr. Sharma listened, her eyes sharp and focused. When I was done, she closed the portfolio gently. "This isn't just a brand, Miss Vance," she said. "This is a masterclass in cohesive design theory. Your brother may have built the house, but you were the architect, the engineer, and the interior designer. The university would be honored to have you." I walked out of that meeting with a signed contract for an adjunct professorship, starting in the fall. I would be teaching a course called Brand Architecture, building a narrative from the ground up. The irony was so perfect, so poetic, it felt like the universe was finally winking at me. I started a small independent design consultancy out of my apartment. My first client was a local bakery run by 2 women who were blown away by the blog post. They wanted a brand that was authentically theirs. We won our souls in the flower, not just a story on the box, one of them told me. Working with them felt like breathing clean air after being in a stale room for years. The fallout with my family wasn't clean or quick. It was a slow, painful amputation. They saw my new life not as a triumph, but as a betrayal. My success outside of their control was an indictment of their narrative. They couldn't be proud of me, because my independence proved they had been wrong. So they chose to be angry instead. The lines were drawn. They had their company, their money, their story. I had my portfolio, my new career, and the truth. And I was beginning to realize that I had gotten the better end of the deal. The lesson that took me the longest to learn is that you can't force someone to see your value. You can perform for them. You can sacrifice for them. You can shrink yourself to make them comfortable. But you cannot make them open their eyes. My entire life had been an audition for a part I was never going to get. Not because I wasn't talented enough, but because the directors had already cast someone else. My family didn't see my worth, not because it wasn't there, but because my light was making their own shadows feel too long. It was easier to keep me in the dark. My brother needed to be the sole visionary because the idea of sharing the credit was a threat to his ego. My parents needed him to be the hero because it validated their own life choices and priorities. My role was to be the quiet, stable foundation upon which his monument was built. And foundations, by their very nature, are meant to be invisible. For years, I thought my job was to work harder, to be better, to create something so undeniably brilliant that they would have no choice but to see me. I thought love and recognition were something to be earned, like a gold star on a chart. I operated under the illusion that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, eventually the scales would balance. But that's not how it works in systems like that. The more I gave, the more they took. The quieter I became, the louder they demanded my silence. My value to them was directly tied to my invisibility. The moment I stood up and claimed my own light, I became useless to them. I had broken the unspoken contract. You will be our talented secret. And in return, we will provide for you. But they didn't understand that I wasn't being provided for. I was being contained. Walking away wasn't just about reclaiming my work. It was about reclaiming my own definition of success. For a decade, success meant Oakhaven's bottom line. Another magazine feature with Liam's face on it. My parents' placid approval. It was a hollow, second-hand victory. Now, success is sitting with a new client and seeing the excitement in their eyes as we brainstorm ideas together. It's the email from a student who finally understood a complex design principle because of how I explained it. It's the quiet satisfaction of paying my own bills with money I earned on my own terms, under my own name. I learned that family isn't always about blood. It can be, but it's not a guarantee. True family are the people who see your light and aren't afraid to let you shine. It's Professor Finch, who held a door open for me for 10 years, without ever asking for anything in return. It's my new clients, who respect my talent enough to pay for it. It's my students, who see me as a source of knowledge, not a convenient hidden resource. The most important thing I did was to stop calling it a sacrifice and start calling it what it was, a bad deal. I stopped seeing myself as a martyr and started seeing myself as an artist who had taken a very long, very painful detour. And that's okay. because that detour taught me more than RSD ever could have. It taught me the difference between a job and a calling, between loyalty and self-erasure, and between the family you are born into and the one you choose to build around you. I didn't lose a family. I left a business arrangement that had run its course, and in its place, I'm building a life. So I'm here now, in my own space, surrounded by my own work. The calls and angry texts have mostly stopped. I hear through the grapevine that Oakhaven has hired a big, expensive marketing firm to refresh the brand. I guess it's harder to tell a compelling story when the storyteller has left the building. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done it differently. If I should have requested a private meeting, or written a letter, or just quietly faded away. But that quiet fading is what I'd been doing for 10 years. The public nature of my departure wasn't for them. It wasn't about shame or revenge. It was for me. It was the only way to ensure that the story couldn't be twisted, rewritten, or denied. It had to be as loud and undeniable as the lies they had been telling themselves for a decade. So I want to ask you, what would you have done? Was I right to reclaim my story so publicly? Or was there a better, quieter way to take back my life? When your work, your soul is stolen, do you confront it with a whisper or a roar? Let me know what you think in the comments. I truly want to know. And if you believe in the power of owning your own narrative and want to hear more stories about finding your voice, please make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you for listening.